Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The gavel came down with a sound that was both final and utterly devastating, a sharp crack of wood on wood that seemed to suck all the air out of the sterile, overly warm courtroom. For Willow Tate, that sound was not just the judge calling for order, it was the sound of her world, meticulously and painfully reconstructed over the past few years, shattering into a million unrecognizable pieces. She sat perfectly still in the witness stand, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white little islands of bone against her pale skin. The gentle, hopeful light that had so recently returned to her eyes after her battle with leukemia, after the hard-won peace with her mother, after the mending of her marriage to Michael Corinthos, was gone. In its place was a void, a flat, dark expanse of pure betrayal so profound it felt like a physical wound. She couldn't look at Michael, who was seated at the defendant's table beside his lawyer. She could feel the heat of his shock and burgeoning rage from across the room, a palpable force that vibrated against her skin. But her gaze, wide and unblinking, was locked on the woman who had just dismantled her life with a few, carefully chosen, poison-tipped words. Nina Reeves. Her mother. The woman who had wept with her, held her through the fear of her illness, who had begged for and seemingly been granted forgiveness. The woman who had just, with the cold precision of a surgeon, plunged a dagger into her back and twisted it. Nina, for her part, looked as though she were the one who had been mortally wounded. Her face was a tragic mask of conflicted emotion, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She stood a few feet away, having just been dismissed from the stand after delivering her testimony. She wrung her hands, a picture of maternal anguish, but there was a defiant set to her jaw that only Willow, in her intimate knowledge of the woman's complexities, could see. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a reluctant truth dragged out of her by a skilled prosecutor. This was a choice. The case had seemed, if not straightforward, then at least defensible. Michael was fighting for sole custody of his and Willow's son, Wiley, against his grandmother, the formidable and perpetually scheming Carly Corinthos. The grounds were Carly's instability, her history of manipulative behavior, and the toxic environment she could create. It was a brutal family schism, the latest in a long line of Corinthos battles that spilled out of their mansions and into the public record. Willow, despite her complicated history with Carly, had stood by her husband. She believed, truly believed, that Wiley's best chance was with them in a stable, loving home, away from the cyclone of drama that perpetually swirled around his grandmother. Nina had been their secret weapon. Or so they thought. As Carly's bitter enemy, as the woman who had been systematically frozen out of Wiley's life by Carly's design, Nina's testimony was supposed to be the silver bullet. She was to testify to Carly's vindictiveness, her capacity for cruelty, her unsuitability as a primary guardian. She was the one who could provide the judge with a first-hand account of Carly's manipulations, of the lengths she would go to control the narrative and the people around her. Willow had pleaded with her mother to do this, to stand with them, for family. And Nina had agreed. She had embraced Willow, her voice thick with emotion, and promised. "Anything for you, my darling. Anything for my family." The air in the courtroom had been thick with tension from the moment the proceedings began. The judge, a weary-looking woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, had listened to arguments from both sides with an expression of profound fatigue. Port Charles's finest families always did provide the most dramatic and draining litigation. When Nina's name was called, she had walked to the stand with a somber dignity, her posture ramrod straight. She took the oath, her voice clear and steady, and settled into the chair, her gaze briefly finding Willow's, offering what looked like a reassuring nod. The first part of her testimony went exactly as planned. Under gentle questioning from Michael's attorney, she outlined her fraught relationship with Carly. She spoke of Carly's decision to keep the secret of Nina being Willow's mother, a deception that had caused immeasurable pain. She described Carly's coldness, her barbs, her active campaign to alienate Nina from her daughter and grandson. She was articulate, measured, and devastatingly effective. Willow felt a flicker of hope. They were going to win. They were going to protect their son. Then, it was the turn of Carly's attorney. The cross-examination began predictably enough, with the lawyer attempting to paint Nina as an unreliable, emotionally volatile witness with her own axe to grind. He questioned her motives, suggesting her testimony was nothing more than an act of revenge against Carly. Nina held her ground, her responses crisp and defiant. But then, the lawyer shifted his approach. It was a subtle turn, a change in the atmospheric pressure of the room. "Ms. Reeves," he began, his tone deceptively casual, "you speak of stability, of the best interests of the child. You've presented yourself here as an advocate for a stable home environment for Wiley Corinthos. Would you say that your daughter, Willow, provides that stability?" Objection, leading in calls for a conclusion, Michael's lawyer snapped. "I'll allow it," the judge said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "The witness's opinion of the home environment is relevant." Nina glanced at Willow, and for the first time, Willow saw a flicker of something else in her eyes, not reassurance, but calculation. "Willow is a wonderful mother," Nina said, her voice softening. "She is loving and kind and strong. She has been through so much and has always put Wiley first." "A wonderful mother," the lawyer repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "And her marriage to Michael Corinthos? Would you characterize that as stable? A solid foundation for a child?" Willow's blood ran cold. Where was this going? Michael's hand, resting on the table, curled into a fist. "They love each other very much," Nina said, but her voice had lost a fraction of its conviction. "Love is one thing, Ms. Reeves. Stability is another. You are aware, are you not, of the significant turmoil their marriage has endured? The separations? The infidelities?" Objection. Argumentative and irrelevant. Sustained. "Counsel, get to your point," the judge warned. The lawyer nodded, a small, tight smile playing on his lips. He picked up a document from his table, though he didn't reference it directly. It was a prop, a threat. "Ms. Reeves, let's talk about your own commitment to the truth. You recently became aware of a significant secret, did you not? A secret that, had it been revealed, would have drastically altered the lives of nearly everyone in this room." Nina froze. Her eyes darted from the lawyer to Carly, who was watching her with a cold, triumphant glare, and then, finally, back to Willow. The look she gave her daughter was one of pure, unadulterated agony. It was the look of a traitor who knew the cost of her betrayal. I don't know what you're referring to," Nina whispered, but the lie was flimsy, transparent. "Don't you?" the lawyer pressed, his voice dropping to a confidential, almost sympathetic tone. "This isn't about your feud with my client, Ms. Reeves. This is about the welfare of a child. The court needs to know the full character of the people seeking custody. It needs to know if they are surrounded by people who value honesty. So I'll ask you again, and I urge you to consider your answer carefully. Did you, or did you not, recently discover that Willow Tate was not, in fact, the biological daughter of the late Harmony Tate?" A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Willow felt the floor drop out from beneath her. This was her secret. Her pain. The foundational trauma of her life, the belief that her mother was a manipulative, drug-addled cult leader who had lied to her for her entire life. And then, the subsequent, even more shocking truth that Nina was her biological mother. It was a closed wound, a private agony that had been healed, or so she thought, through her reconciliation with Nina. It had nothing to do with this case. Nothing. "Your Honor, this is outrageous." Michael's lawyer was on his feet, his face purple with rage. "Counsel, you will explain the relevance of this line of questioning immediately," the judge commanded, her voice like steel. "The relevance, Your Honor, is credibility and moral fitness," the lawyer said, turning to address the room. "The petitioner, Willow Corinthos, has built her identity on a lie. Her entire life is a question mark. More importantly, the witness, Nina Reeves, knew a truth that would have provided Willow with a sense of identity and family years ago, and she chose to withhold it. She chose deception. She is now here, asking this court to trust her judgment about who is a fit parent, when she herself engaged in a massive, life-altering deception against her own daughter. If she will lie about that, what else will she lie about? And what does it say about the environment at the Corinthos home that it includes a woman capable of such a profound betrayal? The logic was circular, vicious, and brilliantly effective. It wasn't about the fact itself, it was about the act of concealment. It was about painting their entire side with the brush of Nina's duplicity. The judge was silent for a long moment, her gaze shifting from the lawyer to Nina's ashen face. The witness will answer the question. All eyes were on Nina. The silence in the room was absolute, heavy enough to crush lungs. Willow watched, paralyzed, as a single tear traced a path through her mother's meticulously applied makeup. This was the moment. This was the precipice. Nina could have denied it. She could have clung to the lie, for Willow's sake, for their sake. The lawyer had no hard evidence, only a rumor, a bluff. He was fishing, and Nina held the rod. All she had to do was not take the bait. But she did. She took a shaky, ragged breath, and her eyes, filled with a terrible, selfish sorrow, met Willow's. Yes, she whispered into the microphone. The single word was a thunderclap. It's true. The lawyer didn't let up. He was a predator who had drawn blood and now moved in for the kill. Please speak up for the court, Ms. Reeves. You are stating under oath that you discovered Willow was not Harmony's biological daughter, and that you are her biological mother, and you chose to keep this information from her? Nina's voice broke as she spoke, but the words were clear, each one a shard of glass lacerating Willow's soul. Yes. I discovered the truth. I had my suspicions, and I had them confirmed. I am her biological mother. And I didn't tell her. I kept it a secret. Why? The lawyer asked, his tone one of feigned curiosity. Why would you keep such a monumental truth from your own child? And that's when Nina delivered the coup de grace. She didn't blame fear, or timing, or the complexity of the situation. She framed it in the context of the case, sealing their fate with her own self-justification. I was afraid, she wept, the performance utterly convincing in its display of torment. I was afraid of losing her. I had just gotten her back in my life. I saw how happy she was with Michael, how focused she was on her family with Wiley. I thought the truth would destroy that. It would destroy her. I thought I was protecting her stability. Her happiness. There it was. The perfect, poisonous paradox. Nina, the star witness for their case, was now testifying that she had engaged in a massive deception because she believed Willow was too fragile, her family too unstable, to handle the truth. She was literally arguing, on the stand, that Willow's happy home was a facade that could be shattered by a single piece of information. And by extension, she was testifying that a home built on such a fragile foundation, a home that required such monumental secrets to be kept in order to survive, was not the stable environment a child like Wiley needed. It was a masterstroke of manipulation, and whether Nina was consciously aware of it or was simply following her own selfish, tangled instincts, the result was the same. She had not only revealed Willow's most painful secret to the entire world, she had weaponized it against her. The rest of the hearing was a blur. There were more arguments, more objections, but the damage was done. The judge's demeanor had shifted. She looked at Willow not with sympathy, but with a newfound wariness. The foundation of their petition had been exposed as cracked and unsound. When the gavel fell for the final time that day, it was to deny Michael and Willow's petition for sole custody and to grant Carly increased, nearly equal, visitation rights. It was a staggering loss, a victory for Carly built entirely on the rubble of Willow's trust. As the court adjourned and people began to file out, a buzzing hum of excited gossip filling the room, Willow remained seated. She was a statue of grief. She felt Michael's hand on her shoulder, his touch meant to be comforting, but it felt like a brand. He was saying something, his voice a low, furious rumble, but the words were meaningless noise. All she could hear was the echo of Nina's voice. Yes. It's true. Then, Nina was there. She approached the witness stand hesitantly, her arms outstretched, her face a mess of tears. Willow, baby, please, you have to understand. He backed me into a corner. I had to tell the truth. I had to. Willow slowly raised her head. The movement was stiff, robotic. She looked at the woman standing before her, this stranger who shared her DNA. The love she had so carefully cultivated for her, the empathy for her struggles, the joy in their connection, it was all gone, incinerated in the furnace of this betrayal. In its place was a cold, hard, and absolute certainty. "Get away from me," Willow said, her voice quiet, but so sharp and cold it could have cut diamond. "Please, let me explain," Nina begged, reaching for her. "Don't you touch me," Willow hissed, recoiling as if from a venomous snake. She finally stood, her legs trembling but holding. She looked Nina directly in the eyes, and in that gaze, she poured all the pain, the humiliation, the shattered trust of a lifetime. "You didn't have to do anything. You chose. You stood up there and you chose to destroy me. You used the most painful part of my life as a weapon to help Carly. You betrayed me for your own twisted reasons that I will never, ever understand. It wasn't like that. I was trying to protect you." Nina cried, the words now sounding hollow and pathetic. "You weren't protecting me," Willow stated, her voice flat and final. "You were protecting yourself. You always do. You told me you were my family. You made me believe it. But family doesn't do this." She gestured around the emptying courtroom at the pitying and curious stares. "You have just proven, beyond any doubt, that you are exactly who everyone always said you were. You are toxic. And you are dead to me." With that, Willow turned her back on her mother. She took Michael's arm, needing his physical strength to keep her upright, and walked out of the courtroom without a backward glance. She left Nina standing alone in the well of the court, the architect of her own misery, finally facing the true and total cost of her actions. The truth had set no one free, it had only built a prison of bitterness and regret, and its walls would now define their lives for a long, long time to come. The car ride home was conducted in a silence that was thicker and more oppressive than the tension in the courtroom had been. Michael's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tightly a muscle ticked in his cheek. The anger radiated off him in waves, a simmering fury directed at Nina, at Carly, at the legal system, but Willow could feel a sliver of it, inevitably, aimed at her. He hadn't wanted to rely on Nina. He had warned her that Nina was unpredictable, that her loyalty was a fickle thing. Willow had insisted. She had vouched for her mother. She had staked their case, their son's future, on the belief that Nina's love for her was real and stronger than her hatred for Carly. She had been catastrophically, humiliatingly wrong. When they arrived at the house, the familiar surroundings that usually felt like a sanctuary now seemed like a mockery. The carefully chosen art on the walls, the toys neatly stacked in a basket in the living room, the photographs of their smiling faces, it all felt like a stage set for a life that no longer existed. Wiley was with his nanny, and the quiet of the house was deafening. Michael finally broke the silence, his voice low and gravelly with controlled rage. "I am going to destroy her, Willow. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I will make sure Nina Reeves never comes near our family again." Willow didn't respond. She stood in the center of the room, hugging herself, feeling adrift. His anger was justified, but it was a foreign country to her in that moment. She was numb, all her emotional resources expended. The betrayal was so complete, so multi-layered, that she couldn't even begin to process it. "She sold us out," Michael continued, pacing now. "She stood there and she let Carly's lawyer manipulate her into throwing you to the wolves. She gave Carly exactly what she wanted. My mother is probably popping champagne right now." "Don't," Willow whispered, the word barely audible. "Don't what?" Michael stopped and looked at her, his expression pained. "Willow, she crucified you in there. She made you look unstable. She made it look like our marriage is a house of cards." "For what? To save herself from perjury? It was a bluff. She's too selfish to see past her own nose. I said, don't." The words erupted from Willow with a force that surprised both of them. It wasn't a shout, but a raw, ragged cry of pain. "Just don't, Michael. I can't. I can't listen to you analyze it right now. I can't hear about Carly or the case or perjury. I can't." The tears came then, not the quiet, graceful tears of a sad heroine, but great, heaving sobs that racked her entire body. They were tears of utter humiliation. The entire town now knew her most intimate shame, that the woman she called mother was a liar, that her own identity was a fiction, and that her biological mother had deemed her too weak to know the truth. She had been laid bare in a public courtroom, her trauma used as a legal strategy. The violation was absolute. Michael was at her side in an instant, his anger momentarily eclipsed by concern. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her tight against his chest. "Shoo, it's okay. I'm here. I've got you," he murmured into her hair. But it wasn't okay. How could it ever be okay? The person who was supposed to have a primal, biological imperative to protect her had been the one to cause the most profound harm. The bond of mother and daughter, which had felt so sacred, so hard-won, had been revealed as a transactional, conditional thing. Nina's love, it turned out, came with a price, and that price was Willow's dignity, her privacy, and her sense of self. In the days that followed, Port Charles did what it did best, it feasted on the scandal. The news spread like wildfire. Nina's courtroom confession. Willow's shocking parentage revealed. Carly wins custody battle as Nina betrays daughter. The headlines were splashed across the local paper and gossiped about in every cafe and office in town. Every time Willow left the house, she felt the weight of stares, the whispers that stopped when she approached. She saw pity in some eyes, morbid curiosity in others. She felt like a ghost in her own life, haunting the places she used to inhabit with joy. She stopped taking calls. She couldn't face anyone. Drew, her biological father, tried to reach out, his messages filled with a protective fury and a deep sadness, but she couldn't speak to him. What would she say? His relationship with Nina was another casualty of this bomb she had dropped. How could he ever look at the woman the same way again? Her circle of trust, which had once slowly expanded to include Nina, had now shrunk to a tiny, fortified point containing only Michael and Wiley. Nina, for her part, became a woman possessed. She called dozens of times, her pleas evolving from desperate explanations to angry accusations. She left long, rambling voicemails that Willow deleted without listening to in full. "You have to let me explain. You're my daughter. You can't shut me out," became "How dare you judge me? After everything I've been through? After everything Carly has done? You're being unfair, Willow. You're just like everyone else." The victim blaming was the final confirmation Willow needed. Nina was not sorry for what she had done, she was sorry she was facing the consequences. Her love was, and always had been, contingent on Willow validating her choices, no matter how destructive they were. A week after the hearing, Willow found herself standing in Wiley's room, watching him sleep. His little chest rose and fell with the serene rhythm of a child untouched by the complexities and cruelties of the adult world. In this quiet, peaceful space, surrounded by the simple, pure love she felt for her son, the fog of numbness began to recede, and something else began to take its place. It wasn't anger, not the hot, explosive kind that Michael carried. It was a cold, clear, and resolute certainty. She would not be broken by this. She had survived a cult. She had survived cancer. She had survived thinking she would never find love or a family of her own. She would survive Nina Reeves. It was supposed to be a calm morning in Port Charles, but the tension inside the courthouse was thick enough to choke on. Nina Reeves sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her mind raced with guilt and fear, but beneath that, burning, pulsing like a wound that wouldn't heal, was a flicker of vindication. She had convinced herself she was doing the right thing. For justice. For truth. But deep down, she knew it was for something else. Revenge. Willow Tate Corinthos sat just a few feet away, unaware that the woman across from her was about to shatter her life again. Michael reached over, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever happens today," he whispered, "we'll handle it together." Willow smiled softly, her eyes filled with faith. "I know. I just want to put this behind us." The judge entered, and everyone rose. Nina could feel her heart pounding in her ears as the bailiff announced the start of the custody hearing. Sonny Corinthos sat in the back row, his dark eyes watching silently, his jaw tight. He hadn't wanted it to come to this. He thought Nina would back down, that she'd finally learn to stay out of things she didn't understand. But that wasn't Nina's way. The proceedings began smoothly at first, routine questions about visitation, medical stability, family involvement, but as the discussion turned toward Nina's relationship with Willow and the children, her emotions began to twist. Her attorney asked, "Ms. Reeves, can you tell the court why you believe it's in the best interest of the children for you to have regular visitation?" Nina hesitated. She glanced at Willow, who sat upright, calm but guarded. "Because I'm their grandmother," Nina began softly. "And I love them. I want to be part of their lives." The judge nodded. "And what's preventing that now?" Nina's throat tightened. She could have stopped there. She could have left it at love and reconciliation. But the bitterness rose like a tide. "Willow doesn't trust me," she said. "She's kept things from me. From the court, even." Willow's eyes widened slightly. "Excuse me?" she whispered, turning toward Michael. Michael frowned. "What is she talking about?" Nina looked down at her hands. Her lawyer gave her a warning glance, but she ignored it. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling, "I didn't want to do this. I really didn't. But I can't stay silent anymore. The court needs to know the truth." The room shifted. Even Sonny leaned forward, sensing the moment was about to explode. The judge looked at Nina sternly. "Ms. Reeves, if you have information relevant to this hearing, you may present it. But be aware that false testimony will have consequences." Nina nodded, her breath shaky. "It's not false. Willow lied to everyone." Willow's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about, Nina?" Nina's gaze lifted, filled with both pain and fury. "You told the court you're stable. That your recovery is complete. But I have documentation, medical documentation, that says otherwise." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Michael stood immediately. "That's not true. You have no right." "Sit down, Mr. Corinthos," the judge ordered. Nina pulled out a folder, sliding it toward her attorney. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to continue. "Willow's been hiding her medical complications. She's been downplaying how fragile her health still is. She's been putting herself at risk, and by extension, the children. I have the proof right here." Willow's voice cracked. "How did you get that?" "That's private medical information." Nina's lips quivered. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy. I only found out because of a mutual contact at the hospital. They were worried about you, worried about Wiley and Amelia. I had to protect them." The judge frowned deeply. "You obtained medical records without consent?" Nina's attorney quickly intervened. "Your Honor, my client's intentions were not malicious. She simply wanted what was best for the children." Willow's eyes filled with tears. "How could you do this, Nina? After everything? After I gave you a second chance?" Nina's voice wavered. "Because you keep pushing me out. You keep acting like I'm the enemy, but I'm their grandmother. I deserve to know if you're well enough to take care of them." Michael slammed his hand on the table. "You don't get to decide that." Sonny finally stood from the gallery, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Enough." Everyone turned toward him. His tone was low, but it carried. "Nina, what the hell are you doing?" Nina looked at him helplessly. "You said you wanted honesty, Sonny. That's what I'm doing." "No," he said firmly. "What you're doing is betrayal." Her lips parted, her heart shattering. "Betrayal? After everything she's done to keep me from my grandchildren?" "This isn't about revenge," Sonny snapped. "This is about you crossing every damn line again." The judge called for order, banging the gavel. But the damage was already done. Willow sat frozen, her world spinning. She could barely hear the legal jargon being exchanged, the objections, the questions, because her mind was reeling with humiliation. Later, outside the courtroom, Willow faced Nina in the hallway. Michael tried to hold her back, but she stepped forward, her voice shaking with anger. "You had no right to do that." Nina's eyes glistened with tears. "I had every right as their grandmother." "No," Willow said, her tone cutting. "You had every opportunity to be part of their lives, but you keep destroying every bridge I build. You don't know what love means, Nina. You only know how to control." Nina flinched, her lips trembling. "That's not true. I've made mistakes, but I've been trying." "Trying?" Willow's eyes filled with tears. "You just told a courtroom I'm unfit to be a mother. How is that trying?" Sonny stepped forward, his voice firm but pained. "Nina, you need to understand something. What you did today, it's not just going to affect Willow. It's going to affect me too." Nina turned to him, desperate. "Sonny, please, you have to see why I did it." He shook his head. "I see it clear as day. You wanted to hurt her because she shut you out. That's not love, Nina. That's vengeance." Her breath caught. "So that's it? You're just going to take her side?" "I'm not taking sides," Sonny said quietly. "I'm telling you that you crossed a line you can't uncross." Michael led Willow away, his hand around her shoulders. "Come on, let's go." As they walked down the hallway, Willow's legs felt weak. "She just couldn't stop," she whispered. "No matter what I do, she always finds a way to punish me." Michael kissed the top of her head. "We'll fight this. I promise." "She's not going to win." Back inside, Nina sat on a bench, trembling. Her attorney approached. "You realize this could backfire. The judge may rule that you violated privacy laws. You could lose your visitation petition entirely." Nina's voice broke. "I didn't want it to go this far. I just wanted to be heard." But even as she said it, she knew she'd gone too far. That night, back at Sonny's penthouse, the silence was unbearable. Nina paced the floor while Sonny poured himself a drink. He didn't look at her. Not once.